Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the Corporate Parenting Committee meeting. It is now 7:05 and I would like to start this meeting. I am Councillor Mark Hurrell and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. Officers attending virtually on Microsoft Teams, please use the raise your hand option when you wish to speak, and Emma will note this down and will let me know. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absences. Emma, have any apologies been received?
Other than those that I've given to you, we've got Councillor Watson in for Councillor Alaiki, and Councillor Spate has sent apologies, and two co-optees have also sent their apologies, Jackie and Laura.
Thank you, Emma. I've received apologies from Councillor Hartstein as well. Agenda item 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the Corporate Parenting Committee meeting held on the 31st of July 2024 be approved as a correct record. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to any items of urgent business. Item 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to make? No, thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, Thurrock Young Voices presentation. Can I ask the Thurrock Young Voices to present their presentation to the committee?
So good evening. I'm going to start with our power participation workshop. So we recently had 10 young people facilitating this fantastic in-person workshop for workers across 2 dates. The first one on 17th of May, 20 workers attended, and on the 29th of July, we had 16 workers attended. We also recently had one for our corporate councillors. We had a few turning up, which was quite a success. We got to see quite a lot of competitiveness between you guys. This training was designed and facilitated by young people. The young people delivered provoking, engaging sessions, adapting and including new material after their first session to keep the next one fresh. And they received fantastic feedback from the workers and also our councillors. Obviously, we got feedback such as they really enjoyed the workshop. They thought, we had some other feedbacks where they thought it should be mandatory. We also had, the next step is also the training is going to be offered also on the 28th of October, so next Monday. And we're going to talk about the care experience as protected characteristics. Obviously, that motion was passed, and our young people are incredibly thankful, but also happy for this. Through this, we've had opportunities within our own, children's services with a new job opening for Care Leave Ambassador. So we're also very grateful for that. It's on to you.
So I'm going to talk about a few activities that we did over the summer. So over the summer, we had lots of fun and interesting activities. There was the Summer Indoor Olympics. So we all played different games. There was an assault course and a fashion show, basically where the young people chose one person and they dressed them up using wrapping paper. Whatever wrapping paper we had, I think it was Christmas wrapping paper. It was quite random. So we had a lot of laughs with that one. So everyone really enjoyed it. It was a huge success, despite it being a replacement for the self-defense day, because the instructor injured himself somehow. Then there was the Oak Tree Garden Wall Mural project on the 19th and 29th of August. We worked with Tiger Monkey, their professional artists, to design the wall to create a fun and family-friendly environment. So it was nice. So it would be nice for like mums and dads, like families, to come together, kind of thing, I guess. Then there was the Grange Waters Activity Day. I think this one was the biggest success. We had lots of different activities, like face painting. There was an ice cream truck. There was all the different activities at Grange Waters, like rock climbing, kayaking, and there was archery as well. The staff worked really hard to make it happen. Lots of children attended. I think there was more than there was supposed to be, which was really good. And we had lots of positive feedback, so we will definitely be doing that each year, because it's good for children to come together and it's a way for them to make new friends.
May I add as well that the ice cream truck we had was sponsored by John Lewis, I believe. But I also want to touch on an event that I led that was a passion of mine, but it was local Off Information Day run by our young people. This was eventually for care leavers. You know, we felt like they don't kind of know the services that are out there to support them. So we thought, make like an event where they come in and there's loads of, people from different services explaining what they, have that out there for them. I also wanted to mention that at the moment we're working on, or something we'd like to raise with our corporate parents, is that we've had an idea from our young people to create and strengthen relationships with our local businesses, who would like to support our care leavers with work experience, job opportunities, donations of food, clothes, and essential items. We'd obviously love for you guys to support us in this. Sometimes even finding jobs within, your job description sometimes could be shadowing or mentoring or something like that, just something that we can get to have an opportunity and work with you guys. But also outside other businesses, if we can have you guys coming together and pitch ideas to other businesses and support us, as our corporate parents. With regards to foods and clothes, the idea was very much on building a relationship with our supermarkets or local businesses, and see if we can get any donations so our young people can feel supported and heard by our corporate parents and not just being sent out there to just food banks whenever things get tough. I think that's all. So we'd love for you guys to join us with this project. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's a lovely report. Where is the Oak Tree Garden Wall mural, please?
That's in Oak Tree Contact Centre in Grays.
Okay, thank you. I probably should have looked that up. I didn't know anyway, so I thought I'd ask. Does anyone have any questions or any comments they'd like to make? Councillor Watson?
Well, what an inspirational group you are. And I think it's amazing. So you raised with us about what you would like corporate parenting to do. I've already started under my portfolio to actually be an advocate for having you to do apprenticeships as well as the job opportunities that you want. But not just in little businesses, don't sell yourself short. You actually can go into the major businesses here as well. And so I have been talking to DP World, who are very happy and open about working alongside children's services. They will probably ask you to go and have a look and visit and talk about things. So as for mentoring, I would happily be a mentor for someone. And I probably look at my colleagues and they will probably feel very much the same as well. So why don't you put a programme together and reach out about that, and we could pick that up, and I'm pretty sure everybody on the corporate parenting would be happy to do that, and people on the cabinet would certainly be happy to do that.
Thank you so much. I'm sure our young people are going to be excited to hear about this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Councillor Sisterton?
Just like to confirm the training day you did recently was very, out of that whole week, it was definitely the most fun. So thanks for that. And yeah, certainly I'd like to be involved in any mentoring, and I'll approach, I'm councillor in Averley and upwards, so I can approach businesses there to see if they've got any opportunities for work experience initially, I think it would be, wouldn't it? So, okay, so it's a great report.
Thank you so
for all you
much.
do.
We did enjoy that training for corporate parents. It was quite fun as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Rigby?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate what everyone else is saying, yes, very happy to be a mentor to someone, and excellent what Councillor Watson was saying as well, getting into businesses and really helping, so that's brilliant. So, yep, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is that it? Any more? Right, I'd just like to say, like Councillor... Sorry.
Thank you. Just sort of picking up on what the Young Voices have said, we've already started to have some of those conversations across the directorates with the senior leadership team around what they can offer to our young people, and we're reaching out, and we've had some initial feedback from, as you said, DP World, and also the theatre, and some other parts of the council as well, but we're really keen. So we're writing down your names, all the people that have said they're interested, and we'll be getting in contact with you. So we'll be following that up, and we'll come back to the young people as well.
Thank you for that. As Councillor Watson said, I'm sure we all agree, you're just an inspiration to the council. It's brilliant that I think just recently, well, a few years ago, not many people have heard of Young Voices, but lately it's immense, it's brilliant, it's wonderful. I've got no real comments to make, to tell the truth, apart from that. Thank you for tonight. Pardon? Yeah. I would like to thank Young Voices for their insightful and interesting presentation. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to. However, if you'd like to be excused, I'm reading this off a page here, but obviously if you want to go and get some pizza or something, I know you had pizza last time, please feel free to leave the meeting if you'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, how we beat that, I'm not sure, but anyway. Item 6 on the agenda, children's social care performance. Can I ask Elise McQueen to present the report?
Hello. So recommendations that members are cited on the work undertaken in the service to ensure good and improved performance and areas for developments and challenge in children's social care. And members scrutinise the performance data and provide challenge to the service, relevant partners and corporately on how, as corporate parents, we provide appropriate services, keep children and young people safe and promote good outcomes. And this report provides a summary of children's social care performance for children looked after and care leavers. And the data in this report is from the monthly performance report, regional benchmarking data and the national data sets. And obviously, I'm just going to do a summary of the report. So Thurrock's children in care numbers have remained relatively stable year to date. So far in Q2, our number of children looked after have reduced, moving from 284 at the end of Q1 to 267 in August. And it should be noted in terms of Q2, at the time of writing the report, it was included August but it hasn't included the full Q2 September. So in terms of the rate of children looked after per 10,000 population, Q1 2024, the rate was 63 per 10,000. Now, statistical neighbours average at 69 and England averages at 71, as at the end of June. And as at the end of August, we're currently at 59 per 10,000, which is a low number. And I think I'd like to say that this evidences the impact of the preventative measures and successful interventions, particularly through family support and early intervention strategies. And the impact of this work has led to a reduced need for formal care, and it's further widening the gap between Thurrock's children looked after population and the statistical neighbours and the England average. In terms of unaccompanied asylum seekers, with regards to the NTS scheme, in August 2022, and I've mentioned this previously, the threshold rose from 27 to 44. So at any one time, we could have 44 unaccompanied asylum children. Q2 has shown some fluctuation in the US numbers, and you'll see the below graph shows the number of unaccompanied asylum seeking children that were looked after as at the end of the month since July 2023. And again, some of these numbers dropped to 38, but that's some of our unaccompanied. They turn 18, and then we will have our, we'll receive our quota again. Just to say as well is when I talk about UASC, I'm not being disrespectful, that's our unaccompanied. Sometimes we use those acronyms, but it's actually, yeah, I just use it short. For children looked after ceased, episodes ceased, I thought it would be interesting for you to be cited on when children leave our care, what's the reason for them leaving the looked after system. And it's normal for children, the numbers of the children to leave to fluctuate. So in March 2023, we had 97. And then in April 23 to March 24, like last year, we had 147 children that left being looked after. And then in Q1, we had 29 children that ceased to be looked after. And again, these are supported by graphs. One of the most prevalent reasons for ending care is because in this period is Q2, which is 26 children, was that children returned home to live with parents, relatives, or other person with parental responsibility. And that's exactly the kind of picture that you'd want to see for children coming into care. And then what we included is a chart which shows comparative data of entries in and out of care over a 5-year period. It just gives you an idea of the kind of the children coming in, our unaccompanied coming in, children leaving care, and the population percentage of UASC. Okay, in terms of Q1 24-25, 23 children and young people became looked after, and 6 of these were UASC. And you can see that there's quite a drop. So in terms of the Q2, and we're into August, we had 2 children became looked after, which is the lowest number seen in a single month for over a year. In terms of the age profile of children looked after, the cohort remains relatively stable in line with statistical neighbours. We do have a slight increase in the age 10 to 15 age group, and that puts us slightly over the statistical neighbours. And as at the end of August 2024, our figures across all age groups remain stable from Q1. The number of children looked after with the disabilities remained relatively stable since April 2022. And what you see there in the graph below, that there's an increase to 15%. And that's of our looked after population. But the 3% increase on the previous quarter equates to 4 children in care with a disability. The primary need for children in care is abuse or neglect, and this is in line with previous quarters. Number of children looked after open to the Youth Justice Service. As of the first quarter of 24-25, there were 4 children who looked after subject to statutory intervention, and there's a total of 11 children open to statutory intervention, and 4 of those obviously are children looked after, and there's a graph below to represent that. In terms of looked after missing episodes, April 23 to March 24, we had 361 children missing, reported episodes. That was 56 individual children. The reason I'm raising that is because during Q1, April to June 2024, we had 51 missing episodes of 23 individual children. And in Q2, we had 63 missing episodes to 23 individual children. So you can see a difference in the number of children who go missing in our care, which is really positive. And the majority of children go missing are for short periods of time. It relates to older children, 16 or over, and it's generally staying out later than agreed. But the most common reason for children going missing is contact with family and friends. And in terms of return home interviews, in August of this year, we had 94.1% of children were offered a return home interview, and of those offered, 100% accepted. We do have a small number of children looked after who refused return home interviews or not always accepted, and that's because they don't want us to know their whereabouts or which friends that they're with. It's very small numbers. In terms of the timeliness in visits, our timeliness in visits is average of 91.3% during Q1 and Q2 93.3%. And that's in line with our statistical neighbours. In terms of the health assessments, which we discussed at the last corporate parenting board, in Q1 24-25, 18 children looked after initial health assessments were due to be completed, and 5.6 of these were completed within the statutory time frame, which, as we know, is 20 working days. And there's a report being presented today, which was requested to address how that's going to be improved on. Strength and difficulties questionnaire is around our children, and it's for us to understand their emotional well-being, and it's for all children aged 4 to 17 who've continuously been looked after for the last 12 months. And in Q1 2024-25, our average score is 14.6, which is in line with our statistical neighbours. And as at the end of August, it was 14.7. The higher the score is, the more wraparound therapeutic services are provided for children, because a higher score indicates a greater need. So that's a positive score for us. In terms of the adoption figures, they're measured over a 12-month rolling average, and Thurrock is above the national average of 480 days. And the measures relate to a relatively small number of children. So a small number of children experiencing delay can have quite a significant impact over the 12 months. And what we do know is the care proceedings have had significant delays, and court availability is an issue. But we do lots of early planning and close monitoring, and we track all children in proceedings with quite rigorousness. Children looked after placement at a distance. The national average for those placed more than 20 miles from their homes was 21% statistical neighbour, and 23%. So we're at 30%. So Thurrock is currently above these. Of the 80 children placed more than 20 miles from their home, 30%, so 6 of these children are unaccompanied asylum seekers, and we were asked for that figure when we attended the last time. And then I'm coming to the end. Regarding our care leavers, as of June, we had 276 care leavers who had been supported, and there's an age breakdown there. And as at the end of the August 2024, it's 266. In terms of employment and training, 40% of care leavers aged 19 to 21 years of age were in part full-time education, employment or training. And in August, this has risen slightly to 43.3%. And if I can just draw people's attention to the graph, you can see that the focus that we're having on it, it's just slowly rising month on month. There's an impact. And care leavers in suitable accommodation, over 96.5% of our care leavers are in suitable accommodation. Care leavers in touch, over 93% of our care leavers aged 19 to 21 we're in touch with, and this is in line with our statistical neighbours, where the average is average of 93 and the England average of 92. And that concludes the summary of my data report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elise, for that very in-depth report. Any members have any questions or comments? Councillor Heath.
Hello, thank you for your report. I was just wondering if there was any reason for the low number of unaccompanied asylum seekers in this quarter, in the first quarter. Yeah, with the 6. Right, okay, so probably, yeah, work out. Right, okay. And the other question I've got, I know you mentioned that there was 3 children in youth detention accommodation last year, and there was no new children in the first quarter. Is it still 3 children, or in it was in the report? It said there was no new children were made subject to detention accommodation. I'm just wondering, is that still the figure? Is this figure still 3, or is that increased or decreased?
It's decreased to 2.
To 2. Oh, right. Thank you. That's great. Thanks.
Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Yeah. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. It's just a quick one, really. On the unaccompanied children, regardless of asylum seekers, whatever, but on the unaccompanied children, there's a quota in there. There's an NTS quota, and we're below that by 34. Are we being asked to take additional unaccompanied children within the borough from other boroughs right now that's got an over-subscription?
So Thurrock is a receiving authority. We're a port authority. So we know that any time, so I think last weekend we had 2 or 3. Our numbers of asylum seekers today is 42. So it goes up and down. So it's dependent on children turning 18, young people coming into the country. We tend not to take children, we tend not to be on the rota for taking children coming through the National Transfer Scheme because we're a port authority, because we're always near our 44. And so some of the local authorities that are further away or don't live near a port authority and they've got lower UAS numbers, they will get them before us. So although we're compared against statistical neighbours for some of these things, we're not always comparable because dependent on where you're situated will be the amount of care, the amount of unaccompanied you get. We have a steady stream, so we're always on or about our 44.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No, I've got a few myself. I'll carry on with that one, the unaccompanied asylum seeking children. Why were some months at the end half of last year over the National Transfer Scheme, NTS, threshold of 44? Please.
So last year, there was quite an influx of unaccompanied asylum seekers coming in. So, for example, if 10 arrived tomorrow or tonight, we would be over our numbers. So it's coming up to the end of the month, so it would be reported as, so if 10 arrived tomorrow, we'd be at 52. And so that's what would be reported in the data for this month. But what would happen immediately is if they're over 17 and a half, we have to keep them. We can't transfer them, even if we're over our number. So if a proportion of those young people were over 17 and a half, we would have had to keep them. And then we would have to put them out. Any that weren't over that age and over our 44 number, we'd have to then transfer them within a time frame. So it can take usually up to 2-3 weeks to transfer young people within the scheme. So we have to then, they go on a list and then they identify which local authority will take them, and then we have to arrange to transfer them. So there might be short periods of times where we're over our numbers, but we don't stay over that number for very long.
Okay, thanks for that. I think that's cleared that up a little bit. I noticed there was over on some months, just wondered why that was. If the threshold was 44, why we did go over, but you've explained it. Thank you, Janet. Sorry, 1 second. Councillor Heath mentioned the Youth Justice Service. Can someone explain what Thurrock's role is to these children?
Sorry, could you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, sure. The Youth Justice Service, YJS, it says in the report, a statutory intervention is undertaken when a child has been convicted by legal courts or made subject to a youth caution or youth conditional caution and consequently has YJS intervention. What is Thurrock's role in looking after these children, please?
The role of looking after those children that are subject to a statutory order is to provide interventions that we would hope would steer young people away from reoffending. Orders vary in length, and the time span then, it would then depend on what interventions we would provide. So we're really fortunate with our Youth Justice Service that we have access to speech and language therapist, mental health worker, drug and alcohol advice. So we have a whole team around that young person with the aim of reducing reoffending for that young person.
Lovely, thank you for that. So it's mainly about the reoffending, trying to... Yeah, okay, thank you. They're not all questions, some are comments. Item 6, sorry, we're on item 6 now, sorry, 3.1. Sorry. Page 25. It's already been mentioned, Elise mentioned it in the report, from a high of 308 in June last year to a low of 267 in August this year. You may already have done this, but once again, could you explain why this is and why it's so low compared to our statistical neighbours? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's referred to in the report, and I think it, as I said in the report, it comes down to our early intervention and the work that we do with our families. And it also comes down to if a child comes in through the front door, the work that we do, the assessment work that we do and we undertake, and we're working with the families while we undertake the assessments. And then we have our adolescent service and our educare service, which offers parents with children with more complex needs additional support. So it's not any one factor, it's a combination of factors.
Thank you for that, once again cleared up, thank you. Now just a comment really, page 36, the top graph is I've made a note saying that it's very pleasing to see the increase in the return to home interviews completed. We're on practically 100% all the time. I mean, it's just dropped a tad in August, but it's just really good that we're getting these done and completed. It's just lovely to see, great to see. Nearly finished. Page 30, it's the graph at the bottom on the same page. What is being done to try and increase the percentages of roughly low 90s to try and get them up to 100% or near to as 100% as possible, please?
Can you just confirm where on the report what?
Sorry, yeah, 5.2, page 36. The percentage of CLA visits completed in time, children looked after visits completed in time.
Yeah, so in terms of the visits completed in time, when you look at the data, some of the majority of these visits have been completed maybe a day out or 2 days out. So it's not a significant gap. So the minute it goes over obviously the day, the deadline, it counts as late, which it should be. So you've asked what we do. So what we do in the CLA service is that we have performance management meetings. So all of the performance that you see, we meet with our managers. They have to do a monthly report to their service manager, and the service manager meets with them and goes through, and they in turn go speak to their workers. But I myself, even as the head of service, will look at the data and speak to the social workers about why the visits might be out. Is there something that we can do? You know, those kind of things. And sometimes it just might be that they go to do a visit and a young person isn't in, they've gone off to do an activity, and then when they go back, you know, within 2 days, it's out. But it's very small timescales of late?
Thank you for that. It's good that it's 90%, because 90% is obviously very good. It's just, it would be nice if we could get it better, but I know life doesn't allow things like that sometimes, obviously. So, right. My last question on this item, you'll be pleased to hear. Page 43, it's already been mentioned, the care leavers aged 19 to 21, education, employment or training. What caused the dip up to May 2024, which was 39.9%? And what is being done to get back to where Thurrock was this time last year, in the high 50s?
So what caused it to go to 39%? Yeah, I think there's a combination of reasons. There isn't any one reason. So my understanding is that before COVID, there was more local investment into the council, and there was more opportunities. So what COVID did is it kind of closed the door for some of our young people who've got used to being at home and studying from home. So there's a lot of work then to support our young people to get out of the door. And then I think some of our young people have emotional well-being matters that they need support with. So what are we doing about it? So what we do, I mean, there's so many things that we're doing about it, probably take all evening to say. But one of the things that we do is we have a steering group where the heads of service, myself, I meet with the lead on the education of Inspire, and I meet with the head of housing, and we also meet with the CAMS manager for adult service, and we look at all of our individual strategies about what we're doing to improve outcomes for young people, because it's not just about getting a job, it's about support with housing, support with emotional well-being, support with aspirations and what our PAs. So we now meet, well, we've been meeting for quite some time, but we meet monthly. Under that layer, so we're strategic, under that layer there's operational groups where our workers have their own individual meetings, and we have an EAT meeting, where we look at each individual young person, what their needs are. It's like a multi-agency. It's referred to in the report who goes there, what their needs are and what we need to do to get them a stage. So it's about how do we get young people employment ready, not just what the opportunities are for them. And then in addition to that, there's all the employment opportunities that we're now looking at to broaden, some of which you've said yourself.
In addition to that, I'd say that we've got action plans for each of those young people, looking at their individual needs. It's not one size fits all. They're all individuals, so we're having to develop action plans for each of those young people to see how we can get them back into employment. And part of that action plan across for all of those children is about developing things within the council and with businesses and organisations in and around Thurrock. So we're trying to kind of look at what we can do differently. We're also looking at apprenticeships. Is there something we can do slightly differently for our young people? What we know is that in order to get an apprenticeship, you've got to have certain qualifications, and sometimes we need something slightly different to get young people back on the right track. So we're just looking at what we can do differently. And Elise and the team has worked really hard at developing a plan around that. So we're hoping that we'll start to see some development and improvement in that area.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for that. Anyone else have any questions or comments? No. Okay. Yeah, Councillor Sistan.
Well, it's going to come up later anyway, but the initial health assessments, and is that, I mean, it will come up in more detail later, won't it? But is that, do you think that reflects the problems in the health service rather than problems on our side, you know?
Obviously, initial health assessments, it's a joint endeavour. We need to do our bit of it as well. So it isn't, you know, we can't just sort of point to health and say, you know, you need to do this. I mean, they have got a report that they're going to address later, but ultimately the local authority is responsible for referring children in time for their health assessment, and we try to do that wherever possible. Occasionally we can't get them in time, and that might be if a parent refuses to sign permission. If we haven't got a court order, then parents have to sign in order for us to arrange a medical, or sometimes if a child is out of authority or if their placement moves. But we know that there is a wider issue within health, but only this week, we had a task and finish group, but that I'm sure our health colleagues will talk about that a bit later when they're presenting their report. So I think we're hopefully coming up with some solutions that will stick rather than a sticking plaster. Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that. So in terms of, you saw in the report, it was something like 5% of IHAs completed. In August, we had 66.7% of the IHAs completed in timescale. But then in September, we had 0% completed in timescale, but that amounted to 2 children. And then our recent figures of October, we had 20 children of IHAs that were and 65% of those were completed in timescale. So you can start to see an emerging improved picture, but it might be, you know, over time, yeah.
Thank you for that. I think I'll move on to recommendations now then. 1.1, that members are cited on the work undertaken in the service to ensure good and improved performance and areas for development and challenge in children's social care. Is this agreed? Agreed. Thank you. 1.2, members scrutinise the performance data and provide challenge to the service, relevant partners and corporately on how, as corporate parents, we provide appropriate services. Agreed? Yeah, thank you. Item 7 on the agenda. SET, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service Report for Looked After Children, January 2024 to September 2024. Can I ask Dean Rufai to present the report? Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me. As you said, the report really reflects on is in relation to children in Thurrock for the period of January 2024 to September 2024. So Thurrock SETCAMS received 17 formal referrals in the service between January 2024 and September 2024. I can say that 16 was accepted. The one referral that was not accepted was redirected to PEDS by our single point of access team, our triage team. This was due to the fact that that child was for the ADHD pathway. 7 of these young people received, well, I can say 16 received consultation. 7 of this received consultation at the first point of contact. One of the young person was directly allocated to the youth offending CAMS worker within our team. The remaining 6 of the young people were discharged after the consultation, but still received some element of support. Each child and young person would have are provided with a care report, giving details of the outcomes of consultation and assessment. This forms the formulation and whether treatment is required. If treatment is not required, what we tend to do is give advice around alternative resources, not just for the child or the young person, but for the adults and the wider network, providing care and support to that particular child and young person. All 16 children in this case were contacted to obtain the voice of the child, and also psychoeducation was provided to the carers. Just to note that we've done a lot of work in ensuring that children in care's voice of child is actually obtained in our assessment and contact, because we found in comparison to last year, that was one of the gaps that we missed, where we would do a consultation but didn't really speak to the child, regardless of if they needed treatment or not. We felt that actually as a team, it was very important to really get the voice of the child, regardless if they didn't really need the treatment or not, which I can say that has been done in this case. So out of the 16 referrals that we accepted, 2 currently remain open to us and are currently receiving treatment and intervention. The type of interventions that we typically have found for young people in children and in care is trauma-informed therapy, which is basically a pervasive treatment that really looks at the impact of trauma on young people. In addition to that, we've also acknowledged that there are some work that we've done relating to attachment-based intervention, and this is simply an intervention to address attachment difficulties that we often, of course, are aware that young people that are looked after would be presenting. In addition to that, we've also offered a treatment called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is typically known as CBT. And this is really to help young people understand and manage some of the negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, which is also, we know from our experience, linked to trauma and anxiety and depression as well. We've also found that mentalization-based therapy has really, really helped young people that are coming through our referrals. And I guess this really helps the young people's ability to understand their own emotions, and whilst trying to understand others' people's emotions and thoughts as well. Last but not necessarily least, we've treated young people using the dialectical behavior therapy, which basically focuses on the emotional regulations for young people as well. So, like I said before, 7 young people received this intervention, and the graph indicates that what I basically said, that we do find that majority of the intervention that we are using is trauma-based focus and work, and also we do see an increase of CBT and some attachment-based focus as well. Young people that are often receiving treatment have what we will call educational and school-based support, which is basically an emotional and social well-being around the school environment. Clinicians are often encouraged to engage with school, because we find that trauma and impact is not only just in the home, it's everywhere. And our job is to ensure that school, in particular, given that they do provide some care, are informed around some of the presentations, are informed around some of the behaviors, and have also a care plan. One of the ethos that we've really, really worked on is mental health is not CAMS alone, it's everybody's business. And one of our ethos is ensuring that we are sharing these care plans with the wider networks. That includes the carers, but also school as well. We do find that actually that is quite successful. This new collaborative working has been quite successful, and one of the feedback is actually our wider partners are saying that it's really beneficial for them to understand some of the presentation, but more importantly to know what to do about it. Although we offer other services in our specialist services in our team, for example, eating disorder, we also have links to our learning disability teams, and we also have our crisis team. I can confirm for the period of January to September 2024, there were 0 young people who accessed this service. So in terms of contact per month, look, just judging by the graph, like I mentioned, there was a total of children in care referrals that were officially recorded. However, we do have other forums that we've linked in with our colleagues from social care to discuss cases prior a referral coming to our service. For example, one of the forums would be what we would call SDQ meetings, and we've also created a children in care hotline service where our colleagues from social care have direct contact to the to the CI, children in care lead as well. Just really reviewing the data, the highest referral per month was between May and July, whilst the other months matched in numbers. Unfortunately, I can't really give a clear indication or reason for this. I can say that in each SECAMS locality team has an allocated individual clinician to undertake consultation for children in care and with social care and in their area. And the SECAMS CIC lead clinician regularly meets with social care teams monthly for communication across the 2 service. We do that monthly and the notes are recorded. we gathered that actually offering this consultation provides consistency, and it really helps ease of access for young people to CAMS. Also, we've noted that actually by doing this monthly meetings, it's really provided consultation that around cases that are also escalating. We also help give information and support to foster carers and residential home care homes as well. It helps social workers around the necessarily documentations for effective consultations, such as psychological reports and SDQs. We also note that it provides an oversight of all LAC cases within the team and treatment progress. One of the things we've done this year is to ensure that we have knowledge of LAC children that are placed outside of Thurrock, and we're linking in with our colleagues from other set CAMs, really ensuring that they're getting the appropriate care as well. And I guess that role is really the children in care lead role, coalition, and within each CAMS team, there is a dedicated children in care lead who provides support and advice to social care by offering weekly consultation slots as well. We understand the necessity of ensuring that children in care, young people really need quicker access. So what we've really done is created a fast-track timeline and between 10 days and 5 days for assessment. What we find is that young people do have access to getting consultation quicker and subsequently have access to receiving treatment earlier. We understand that children in care are often at greater risk than other children at their age, therefore require additional safeguards to keep them safe and protected. And we, like I was mentioning, we recognize that timely interventions can significantly impact their development and ensure their safety and stability. So what I can confirm is that our referral to assessment range from between 1 to 7 days. So just quickly looking at referrals I'm just going to talk to it very, very briefly. We haven't really seen a major difference between split by gender, male and female. Like I previously noted before, I am aware that we have young people currently located in Basildon and Southend, and it's something that the children in care lead often audit and ensure that they are getting the appropriate treatment that is required for their needs. That concludes my data report. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Dean, for that report. It's really pleasing and important that we're involved in this. Obviously, SET wouldn't be there if Thurrock wasn't involved. I understand that, but it's just such an important thing that we're involved with. I've repeated myself, but anyway. Anyone have any questions or comments to make? Yeah, Councillor Heath.
Thank you for your report. You mentioned supporting schools around trauma therapy. I'm just wondering, is that offered to all schools, and what's the uptake of that if it is?
So I wouldn't say supporting school with trauma therapy in isolation. I think supporting school in general. One of our response to young people is to ensure that the care plan, which I mentioned, is shared with school, so that school have a better understanding of the symptoms and behaviour. There's a lot of stigma, if I'm going to say, around young people that are children in care. And one of the things that we're trying to combat is to ensure that actually a better understanding of why they may respond in this way. So that's really what we're doing, is really giving a good explanation of what the care plan looks like and what we're actually treating, so that the treatment is not in isolation to just CAMS, that actually the treatment is everywhere, including school as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, sorry, Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thank you for the report. You mentioned that no one presented for eating disorders between January and September. Is that just with the looked after children or in general? Because I thought eating disorders were, were apparent in sort of especially adolescents.
It's just for the children in care.
Yeah. It's specifically for looked after children. We do get referrals for eating disorder from Thurrock in general. We haven't brought those figures tonight, obviously, because we were focusing on that. But unfortunately, yes, you do have eating disorders in Thurrock.
Okay, I mean, it's good to hear that none of the looked after children have been affected, at least. That's good.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, and thank you for your report. In terms of the children, mental health, that's changing significantly as well. We've heard earlier unaccompanied asylum seekers. They come with their own type of mental health issues of more war trauma than like DV and all the other trauma put together. I'm assuming you're going to see an uptake in that across the Essex in its own entirety, on its own self. How are you going to cope with that within Thurrock? Because we are a port of entry, and we will have children that will experience that along with the language barrier. And also, how are you supporting schools through the Senko route of how are these, not just these children, but all children with mental health issues? Because it's just going to get bigger and bigger for you. And I think my last bit is, how is the ICB really coping and helping you to support that as well? Because I think it's a whole holistic approach that needs to be taken, not just CAMS or NELF, but it has to be holistic. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Thank you for that question. I can answer two of those questions, but I have to ask my assistant director for the ICB question, if you don't mind. In terms of absorbing some of the pressures, we're very, very flexible. Like I said, we do offer a fast track for young people that are looked after. But also, in addition to that, we have different forums that we could test the temperature. So, for instance, if we do know that actually we're going to get a big uptake, we have the necessary provisions to ensure that we have enough consultation slots to our colleagues. In addition to that, I did previously mention that we have a hotline as well that have quicker access to the lead, and at that point we are able to again other consultations in that sense. All young people in schools have, like I said, we don't work in isolation. We have our crisis team that links in with school. We have our forums, school wellbeing support team that links in with school. I do believe that this forums allows us to really gauge what we need to do and how we need to respond once it comes through the door, really.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think Thurrock is quite a kind of coterminous area, and I think one of the things and one of the luxuries of that, if you like, is that our CAMS service, together with some of our other mental health provision, such as the mental health services in schools, are able to link in very much with social care and education, especially around these children. I mean, like Dean mentioned before, we work with the approach of kind of the mental health and well-being of children is everybody's business. So, the consultation slots and the weekly hotline to CAMS that social care and education can use, often a lot of these cases are discussed, or a lot of cases are discussed that never need to be referred in, because it's just about them actually having advice and support around making sure they're addressing things in the right way in the particular setting that the young person is in.
Thank you. Any more questions? Sorry, apologies.
It's the first time I've used that. I wanted to make sure I did it. So I just thought I'd give a bit more from the ICB point of view, that you're quite right. There's more to do in this space, and it is everyone's business. And actually, there's some really good pieces of work in Thurrock that you're driving forward, particularly in that thinking more about flexible mental health offers. How do we make sure that we broaden that out to all children and young people and not those who would just traditionally access kind of the CBT routes that have already been described. So we'd welcome the chance to come back and talk to you about that in more detail if you'd like us to. NELFT as a provider are actually are very dynamic in their thinking, so they're always thinking about innovative ways to target these young people, particularly if the mental health support team model isn't having the impact that we would like. So we're working closely together. I'm working with Fiona in public health at the moment, but I think there's some work to do about raising awareness about the different pathways. How do all professionals know what the different access routes are, which children should be supported where, and how do we ask for help and who's best to do that? So it's a watch this space, but I think certainly making sure that that information and advice is available to everybody who are supporting young people is the first step.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll take you up on that offer if you don't mind. Not sure when. We'll fit in the work plan and we'll go from there. Thank you. I've just got one question myself. Page 53. The Southend, Essex and Thurrock Combs contract requires an assessment within 10 working days, followed by 5 working days for the plan to be with a social worker. You said the 10 working days is being adhered to and being followed. It's just a really basic question. Are the 5 working days for the plan to be with a social worker, is that happening as well?
Yes.
No, that's a brilliant answer. No, that's the answer I wanted, obviously, so thank you for that. Right, before I do the recommendations, I'm going to read one of them out, but this is not actually the recommendation we're doing now, but that members are aware of the key areas for improvements. Could someone explain what the key areas are, just so we are aware, please?
So can you just say that again, please?
Yeah, sure, sorry. I may be glossing over this really quickly, so there may be a detailed answer, I understand, instead of just one word. That members are aware of the key areas for improvements. Can someone explain what the key areas actually are in layman's terms, sort of thing? So we can do the recommendations properly, so we know what we are recommending.
I'm really sorry. What the carers are? Did you say? Oh, key areas. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, key areas. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. So the key areas, obviously, in CAM services is about obviously making sure that we keep the kind of connections and partnerships going, expanding the mental health in schools, because everybody, CAMS is everybody's business, as we've talked about before, and it's best for, obviously kind of low level early intervention work to be done in the schools. Within the service, we're actually looking at kind of improving the multi-agency care planning and working together with obviously agencies. Our times are very good in Thurrock. I mean, LAC children are seen within 10 days, and the access into CAMS is under 18 weeks in Thurrock. So it's about quality. It's about improving the quality and improving the interface and connections with the services within Thurrock. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. We'll go to the recommendations. I'll do 1.2 first, if that's okay. The members are aware of the key areas for improvements. Is that agreed? Yeah, thank you. That made it a lot easier by having an explanation. So, 1.1, that the SET Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service Report for looked after children, January 2024 to September 2024, is noted and reviewed by members. Agreed? Yeah, lovely, thank you. Item 8 on the agenda, initial health assessments, update on NHS MSc work programme to improve statutory waiting times. Can I ask Claire Angel to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. It's my first time here, so I'm pleased to be here. And I'm almost, or I think this week, 4 months in post. So if you ask me questions and I have a blank look on my face. It may be I come back with an answer at a later date, but I do have Ines who's dialed in, and I've got Sharon behind me who may be able to assist. So bear with me. So the briefing paper, I'll just touch upon the key pertinent points. It aims to provide assurance to you that the task and finish group that's in place are progressing against plans that were presented to you in March 2024. There are descriptions of the IHA provision that are currently in place across the Mid and South Essex footprint for looked after children. And we will make reference to a potential and sustainable costed model and redesign options to ensure that our statutory responsibilities are being met as we would expect them to. It comes with 2 recommendations, and that is to support an approach to involve all local authority colleagues. For the last 6 months, there's been focus on the health components of the initial health assessment process. How can we make sure that that's as efficient as possible within the existing cost envelope? But there is a natural conversation that was started this week with colleagues who are alongside me about making sure that that end-to-end process is actually working as we would want it to. I would also like to request a return after January to give a more detailed overview of the plans that we will have progressed. It's expected that we will have designed an option that will then go through the relevant governance routes. So the Royal College of Nursing and the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health are continuing to lobby and enable advanced paediatric nurse practitioners to take much more of a prominent role in the initial health assessment pathway. One of the most significant barriers is the requirement of a medical doctor to oversee the assessment. The challenge is this natural workforce. Actually, we have a particularly aging population of paediatricians. We're also relying on those same paediatricians to support multiple pathways. The one that would be most obvious to us all is the neurodevelopmental assessment pathways for autism and ADHD. As we know, there's been a significant increase in demand in that space. It's gone up I think 4-fold was quoted recently by the Children's Commissioner, but certainly we know that since 2019 it was about 300% increase month on month. You will know that ICBs have a duty to commission services to undertake the initial health assessments and to ensure that support and services to looked after children are provided without undue delay, and we have not been good enough at doing that. In January, the Council raised concerns around the service delivery and targets not being met, and I am aware that plans for improvement have been described for too long. I believe it's 4 years we've been talking about making improvements in this space. So despite actions and recommendations, that progress has not been made, but I feel confident that we will be able to make change over the coming months. So the work of the Task and Finish Group established in May 2024 can be considered in 2 phases. The first was a desktop research of what other local authority areas, I'll just reframe that. The first phase of it was a desktop review of what other pathway models were in place across the region and nationally. It is a national issue. We're not alone in that, but as we know, or as I have learned, more children become looked after in Essex and then are placed in other areas within Essex, so that level of demand in this space is a bit different. The second phase is refining what that options appraisal might look like. There's 2 aspects to it. One is what a sustainable workforce model could be, and the other is that any backlog activity that would be required to enable us to catch up. So during that phase 1, the review was completed. Examples of alternative pathways included the role of a looked after children's nurse who would gather the information required with an initial appointment in the home or school, that might be in the evening or at a weekend, and then the paediatrician would complete a shorter health assessment at a later time. We commenced engagement with those areas that had such a model in place. Those examples included Warrington and Sussex. And Kent and Medway and Bedford and Sussex responded to requests to meet, and that happened over August and September. This was alongside some requests for information with regard to some of their service specification and description of pathways so that we could understand that kind of end-to-end flow of information and request and kind of how quickly typically those appointments were arranged. The work outstanding from phase 1 included attaining data around was not brought and did not attend data sets. We have found that capturing data and consistent data has been more of a challenge than we would like. We know soft intelligence that sometimes appointments are not made or are missed because they can be conflicting with other statutory and non-statutory appointments taking place at the same time. There are some local challenges around service delivery in Mid and South Essex, and these were outlined in the bullet points below. The first being the historical block contract arrangements. So for those that may not know, across the NHS, we tend to fund a suite of services with providers and provide a whole cost envelope. The idea of that was to move away from a line-by-line kind of interrogation of kind of service delivery. It was to give more freedom to a provider to work with a whole cost envelope and deliver services in that vein. The challenge then is that actually when we're looking at levels of investment, particularly in paediatrics, it can be difficult to extrapolate that data. We can look at workforce models, we can look at activity that happens, but it's not always easy to understand whether our levels of investment are appropriate or not. As someone who has worked in paediatric commissioning for some years, I can say with a good level of confidence that I believe paediatric services have been underfunded for some time, and that many services at the point of service design are quite old-fashioned now in their delivery. So actually we need to do a kind of whole service-wide review. As I said earlier, the current service delivery sits alongside other competing statutory demands. There is a typo in the report, and I apologise for that. So examples being the increase in the number of requests for advice around education, health and care plans. Again, we're relying on the same paediatric teams to respond to those as well. We've also had challenges, as we're all aware, particularly following the pandemic with regard to kind of pathway recovery, so that we know in general waiting times for children is much longer than it used to be. There's an ongoing and continued increase in the number of children coming into care, which has impacted providers. The current contract arrangements don't specify initial health assessment provision. And numbers to be delivered, and therefore that can be difficult in maintaining an accurate or a good level of grip on performance. We know that each provider trust does actually prioritise and manage their IHAs differently and individually according to the separate contract. So an example of that might be that one provider may protect the time of the paediatrician to be in clinic for the purpose of an assessment, whereas others do not. And lastly, an increase in high number of separated migrant children within South West Essex being placed in Mid and South Essex has placed particular pressure on that provider. So phase 2, we believe we're a bit further forward since I wrote the report in identifying what that model and redesign option might be. At the moment, non-recurring funding that was provided to Thurrock was due to kind of run out in October, in this month. As such, this did actually set us with a time frame to work towards around a proposal. Excuse me. So 2 lines of inquiry are currently being scoped. The use of a private provider, so another area where they had significant catch-up activity needed, they'd actually commissioned a private provider to do that backlog activity, and they protected their NHS teams to only support new referrals. A separate line of inquiry is that we standardise initial health assessments based on that LAC nurse model to support the completion of the initial paperwork and that initial appointment. We believe this could be a standardised approach across the different trusts and be more sustainable in the future. Just some additional aspects to add. We are working with the community collaborative, so I'm working with Sharon, my colleague here, to make sure that whatever options are developed, we're doing so together. It is a priority piece of work for both the collaborative and the integrated care board. We need to do some engagement with EPUT, NELFT and Provide to determine whether we would move towards a new pathway model as one, whether there would be a new pathway model as individual trusts, or whether we would adopt something that would be more variable in delivery, particularly as in for EPUT, actually their performance is generally higher than the other two. The conclusions that I have drawn since being in post is that the project required much more input from the Integrated Care Board than perhaps had been perceived at the time, and certainly in March. We continue to have discussions with the community collaborative to think about that onward leadership. I think at the moment it feels appropriate that we do that together to make sure that we maintain pace. There's no standardised reporting of performance to corporate parenting boards from the ICB, and I think this should perhaps be considered going forward. I did meet with councillors during the summer to talk about how those, to talk about the work of the Task and Finish group, and actually some of the suggestions put forward by councillors were are being considered. One of those, as an example, was adopting a risk triage system to make sure that those children that we don't know anything about actually are seen sooner. Essex County Council, and certainly we learned Thurrock and Southend are quite keen to work with us, so actually we had suggestions from council colleagues that we do look at that end-to-end process. We think about whether there's some real innovative ways to think about digital transfer of requests and how we may be able to make efficiencies across the whole pathway. So the recommendations are to note the content of the report, request an update following formal ICB approval of a redesign model for Mid and South Essex, and just jointly support that proposal to work with local authorities across the set footprint. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report, very in-depth and that, and very interesting as well. Any questions or comments from members? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Vigby.
Yeah. Thank you for your report. I've got a few questions really. You mentioned at the beginning that there's an ageing population of paediatricians. Is that because new doctors coming through aren't training in that area?
I don't think I know the whole answer. I was with the University of Essex. I believe there are the number of places for paediatricians to train. We do seem to have a particular issue with attracting them to this area. There was a good description, and forgive me, but I can't remember it, but I believe we're kind of stuck between that draw of London and draw of Cambridge, and that was identified as a particular challenge. It's not just paediatricians, there's a number of kind of key roles in paediatrics that are more challenged than others, paediatric nursing, psychologists, so there's quite a robust piece of work happening at the moment around workforce arrangements and how we can make it an attractive place to work.
Thank you. And you mentioned part of the issues was that there was an increase in looked after children, but I think earlier on we discovered in Thurrock at least there isn't really an increase. Is that in other areas of Mid and South Essex where there's an increase in looked after children?
As far as I understand it, I'm happy to go away and sense check that assumption, though. That's what I've been informed.
Claire.
Thanks, Sharon.
Having looked at the data many a time over many of years, the issue with Thurrock is you attract looked after children into the area because of the foster carers that you have in the Thurrock area and the placements you have in the Thurrock area. So even though Thurrock's numbers of looked after children stay quite steady, the actual numbers coming into the Thurrock borough, which the local provider, as in Nelft, is then commissioned to deliver services for, means that they've seen a kind of 100% increase over the last 3-4 years.
Thank you. Thank you. And could you explain a bit more about the task and finish group work that you mentioned, please?
In terms of what they're doing? Yes, so the task and finish group involved a project manager within the Integrated Care Board working with the lead for children for the collaborative at the time, Sarah Barnes, who has since left her post, as well as looked after children's safeguarding nurses and some clinical leads in that space. So together, kind of the mandate was, actually, we need to look at what a different model is and how we might be able to achieve a service redesign within the initial cost envelope. So because it's working across 3 provider trusts, and actually we have to think about the statutory responsibilities of both ourselves but also that of the local authorities, that team have been meeting on a regular basis to kind of sense check some of those assumptions about what does our data telling us actually? Is it telling us a consistent story? What are the different models that are in place across the provider services? Are there different levels of spend? So we've got different finance arrangements, we've got different contractual arrangements. The data that we can collect is inconsistent. So it was making sure that we what we understood to be the challenges around assurance and grip were also noted alongside the challenges of service delivery. So for some time, colleagues in provider services have said, we need more attention paid to this pathway. There aren't enough of us, and it's not working efficiently. So that team of people have just been working through bit by bit, trying to just make sure that where there is opportunity to make a change, we understand what that is. And if there are any internal barriers to achieving that change, actually we know that in advance so that we can work with our senior colleagues to achieve change for all. So it's a bit like, I suppose, a multidisciplinary project team with buy-in from everyone that has a stake and an interest in this working.
Is it still ongoing?
Yes, very much so. So at the moment they're working on that options appraisal. So they're currently designing it. We expect, so you'll be aware of the financial challenge of the Integrated Care Board. We expect that service redesign will not be as simple as we might like. We also have to test the assumptions around, do we have any looked after children's nurses? Are we going to be able to attract such nurses to a pathway? Are we going to be able to bring along paediatricians with us on this journey? I am advised and assured by colleagues in services that actually there's a real appetite for change. So that project team will be in place until that new model is implemented.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the questions as well, Councillor Vigby. It's really good questions and interesting answers. I did have one question, got 2 now. Page 60, the second bullet point down, each provider prioritises and manage IHAs individually according to their separate contract. There is no central referral hub. I presume a central referral hub would be very helpful, even regional. Is this not going to happen, or is it possible it could?
So I think everything's on the table. When I talked about if we agree that moving to a looked after, if we agree that we look at a nurse-led paediatrician model as our preferred model, we decide whether we move forward as one or we move forward as 3 separate pathways. So moving forward as one would very much focus on that single point of access route.
So it's possible.
I'd like to think so.
Okay, that's great. If it makes things run smoother and children benefit, then obviously that hopefully is the right thing to do. Right, my question I've written down, sorry. Page 61. Can the performance data be broken down so that we know the figures for Thurrock's children? And also, can this include up-to-date figures for Q1 and Q2, which includes July and August?
Yeah, so I'm happy to submit that data. I believe that teams meet on a regular basis to look at the performance data with Thurrock Children's Services and NELFT. So I can go and request that data and submit it to you.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Just a caveat to that is that unfortunately there's a slight lag on the data because a child referred today won't be in the seen within 20 days. They won't show up as being seen in time by the data for usually 6 weeks. Because of the 20 days that we have, and then the reporting process that we have. So there is always a slight lag on the data. But I think January's meeting we should be able to bring you some significant data.
Thank you for that. The main part of the question really was that we could have Thurrock's numbers broken down themselves, but the data would be great in time.
Yeah, so I am to blame for that. What I'm trying to do is, because we've got 3 corporate parenting boards, I'm trying to make sure that everyone gets a consistent message, but recognise that I do need to do some more to just tailor that to you. So that's on me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Watson?
Hi. Claire, thanks for an open and honest conversation and a report, and it's quite refreshing actually, to be frank with you. I mean, a bit like Mark in terms of where we are actually sit right now on this sort of work. So on 61, you've got in 2024, you think there's going to increase to 325 additional cases. Is that across Essex, or is that? I'm hoping that's not Thurrock. I believe that's across the MSC footprint. I've got Ines on the screen who may be able to help me with that data. Is she able to dial in, or is she able to speak, Emma?
I mean, I'm sure Ines can confirm that, but it's my understanding that's across. Yeah.
Essex. So leading on from that, that is what you're projecting. How many is outstanding right at this moment of time for Thurrock children still? Because we've got a backlog that we need to catch up on quickly, but that doesn't give us any of that. So I'm really interested in, when I last come here, we were 31, we were something like 11 done in the first quarter, but this is just telling me what Essex does. And I know you have to take it holistically, but my issue is I've got a backlog. If you've got 20% of that is us with a backlog, how much have we already gone forward on that backlog?
Would you like me to give a live update? So, as Claire's already explained, the ICB have released some funding for us to get extra resource into NELFT in order to address the NELFT and the Basildon and Brentwood backlog. That is an ever improving picture. I can't, and I'm sure maybe Elise has the figures for this week for the number referred, but when I looked at that data the other day, as I say, there's a 2-week backlog, and from this month, there were slots for every a new case that comes in is being booked in within 20 days. So, as I said, when you see that data in January, you should see a significant improvement in that.
Thanks. Janet, do you know what our backlog is for Huss? Because I think we will probably hold those records. Because I'm just really concerned we've still got children out there in foster care homes that hasn't been assessed and that have got some serious issues going with them that the foster parents don't know how to deal with, even though they will look after those children, they want to be trained and everything else. But I just think it's a bit disingenuous to have foster carers who are doing such a fantastic job of looking after these children that we're not helping them, supporting them quick enough.
If I could give some assurance, around that. Obviously, the initial health assessment is a very important assessment, but young people, you know, then they receive health care as required. The initial healthcare assessment is a kind of a more of an overview. So if they need to go to the dentist, if they need to go to see the GP, if they needed a referral to, you know, an urgent referral to acute services, they would get that straight away without even having the initial health assessment. The health assessment is much more of an overview, but if they have health needs which are urgent, then they're addressed before the initial health review.
Okay, so can I just put a challenge out? So if it's just an overview, that's what the health assessment's for. If they want a dentist or they want a pathway or they want something else, why are we waiting on paediatricians to do that? Why can't a normal GP do that? Why does it have to be a paediatrician?
I mean, Claire's looked into this even more than I have, but it's a statutory responsibility, and fortunate or unfortunate, it has a paediatrician, or I think it actually says paediatrician or medical expert in children's that must see them. So it's a medical process at the moment. I know that Claire's some of the seniors within the ICB are trying to push that nationally, as into, you know, actually it's about who's best to deliver that assessment rather than it being specifically a paediatrician. But that is something that it will take longer to change.
Okay, sorry, can I carry on? Of course. Okay, thanks. I was going to anyway. So in terms of the current contract arrangements, I'm absolutely astounded that there is no specified IHA provision put in or any KPIs put against this contract. And going forward, can we have a reassurance that that is actually one of the very first things that we input into some of these contracts? Bearing in mind that one of them, Provide Mid, hasn't really done very much in terms of what they've done, but we can't hold them to account on that. So can the Task and Finish group look at that, if that's okay? And can the Task and Finish group also tell me, or Claire, can you tell me where is the governance on the Task and Finish group? Where does it go with a crossover for us? Thanks.
So, just to set some context, with the shift to integrated care boards, integrated care systems, there was a kind of a shift in policy that said we want you to move away from kind of formal contract monitoring processes, and actually providers should be able to work together collaboratively to kind of manage service improvement and innovation. There's been a change in that now. We know that GRIP and oversight of service delivery needs to improve, and certainly my new chief executive has come in with a focus back on commissioning, which had kind of been removed from the agenda. So what is to be established is, or resurrected, are those formal contract meetings with each of those providers or the community collaborative, and that's really good for colleagues like Sharon and I, because it means we'll be able to kind of formally put things on the table and then audit progress against that. So with regard to any change around contracts, whether that be a revision of a service specification or an amendment to, or a variation as to what KPIs we put in place, we've now got a formal process that we can take that through. So yes, you have my assurance that actually it's me that's responsible for that. For CYP, it's not the Task and Finish group. And then with regard to the governance, so there's that formal contractual piece, and because they're collaborative only today, the senior responsible officer, Jill Burns, and Sharon and I met with Tom Abel, our chief executive, and Dan Doherty, who is the alliance lead with the responsibility for the collaborative contract. We talked about what our joint shared priorities are, of which IHAs is one. So outside of contract meetings, we've both agreed that it needs to be a key feature of the delivery plan, and we also have our internal quality committee who we would expect to report progress. Our safeguarding team has not dropped the baton on this either, so there is vested interest from a number of different teams in the Nursing and Quality Directorate. All right.
Yeah, thanks for that. Innes would like to come in on Teams now, if that's okay.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. Can just someone confirm that you can hear me because we're having some technical problems?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you. So I wanted to come back on the point of why can't it just be done by the GP? And just to provide clarity, it's about knowledge, skills and capacity. So for us to be able to say that GPs would be able to do it, we have to ensure that they would be able to do it with a provision of quality, consistency, and because of the current constraints and the limited capacity in GP practices, that wouldn't be a service that we believe would be of the quality that the IHAs are required. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Anyone? No? Can I go to recommendations, please? Recommendation 1, support an approach to involve all local authority colleagues across the Southend, Essex and Thurrock footprint. Agreed? Agreed. Recommendation number 2, request a return for after January 2025 to receive an update on progress. That's definitely agreed, I'm sure, yes. Yeah, thank you. Item 9 on the agenda, recruitment and retention of foster carers, care experience as a locally protected characteristic. Can I ask Elizabeth Shields to present the report?
Hi, so the report sets out our plans around how to address the sufficiency of foster carers within Thurrock, and that's both in terms of how we plan to recruit more carers and how we retain our current cohort of carers. I'm not going to go through it line for line, but I'll bring out some kind of key areas and then open it up to questions. So it starts with our recommendations around how we plan to do this. It starts with kind of our broad targets in terms of we need to increase inquiries by 20% and improve our inquiry to approval conversion ratio to 10%. So that's around what we know is we might get a large number of inquiries, but how many of those people actually go on to apply and then go on to actually be fully approved as foster carers. What we know is that most inquirers spend many, many years thinking about becoming a foster carer. It's something that isn't something that people kind of do on the spur of the moment. So it's about how we engage people and continue to engage people if they decide that now isn't the right time. And it's also about how we think about how we reach the right people. The 20% as a target is something that's been set by the DFE as part of the Stable Homes Built on Love, which is the idea of kind of entering into regional fostering cooperatives, which is Foster East. So this is a pilot. So we're going to have the kind of additional support from Foster East in terms of marketing and communications to then hopefully drive those inquiries. We know that kind of the best quality inquiries and applications tend to come from people who already have a good understanding of foster care, fostering and what it is. So we very much rely on our cohort of foster carers to help us. We have a group who meet regularly and we talk about ideas around recruitment and retention and very much relying on them and their networks to kind of be those quality inquiries and how we use those routes best. So things like doing the refer a friend scheme, because we know that actually if people are inquiring having already spoken to a foster carer, they are more likely to progress to a full approval. We work closely with marketing and comms in terms of developing our communications plan. We're looking at creating new content at the moment and our digital content, making sure it's engaging, using social media. We've had 2 videos that have launched in the last week. I don't know if people have seen them. One of them is a kind of national campaign that's been done with Can Digital, and there's also a more local video that's been made with Foster East that's also going out kind of in local channels at the moment. We're also thinking a lot about community engagement. We have a recruitment team who I'm sure you've all seen are often out across Thurrock. It's about keeping that visibility across Thurrock, being out engaging people, talking to people. We know that when inquiries come in and they've spoken to somebody in the community, they are more likely to stay engaged in the process and keep going forwards. We're thinking very much about the kind of journey and how we keep people engaged in that journey. We're thinking about how we prepare people so that when they are approved, they're really ready to start fostering, looking at the training that they do, looking at innovative ways to kind of do training. We're looking at things like using VR, you know, to help people understand the experience of children who've experienced trauma, making sure our social workers are trained and skilled in understanding trauma so that they can then support carers. In terms of the DFE work, there's kind of two elements. So the Foster East is kind of the recruitment part, but then in terms of the retention offer, that very much is focusing around launching Mockingbird. And I know there's the video that we might watch in a minute to help understand what Mockingbird is. We've done a lot of work around how we communicate with our carers, how we keep them informed about what's going on within wider children's services, but how they feed back to us as well about issues and things that are impacting on them, and how we keep that communication open to try and improve things. We're also, the Foster Care Association has relaunched recently with some new terms and conditions. Wendy's the chair of the association, she's here. And so that's very much focusing on co-production and ensuring kind of anything that we're doing as a fostering service is co-produced with our foster carers. So in terms of the kind of broad headlines around need, our current numbers of foster carers and the number of children that we have living with our in-house foster carers is remaining steady. We're not necessarily seeing the increase that we'd like to see, but we're also not seeing a significant decrease. So we're kind of managing to hold those numbers steady. We do now currently have 8 households in assessment, which is good, which is a bit of an increase from when I wrote the report. And we've got 2 households going to panel in the next month, which should generate kind of 4 new placements or beds available from those approvals. So that's good. So in terms of the national picture, there is actually kind of nationally a fall of availability. So we are managing to remain above that trend, I suppose, in terms of holding steady in terms of the amount of places we have available. Yeah, shall we watch the Mockingbird video to find out what it is?
I was going to suggest, we've got it arranged to watch the video. It's 8.5 minutes long. Now, the meeting's going on quite a while. I'm quite happy to watch it if members...
So if it's
yeah, okay. Yeah, if Emma could do that, please. Thank you.
Mockingbird is an extended family model of foster care. It's based on the concept of a village to raise a child. So at the centre of it all, you have the hub.
Yeah, we'll come back to that anyway. Thanks for the report. Thanks very much. It's mainly there, so we got an idea about it. Anyone got any questions or comments to make on it? Councillor Watson?
Me. First of all, thank you for all the hard work you do to try and get foster carers into place anyway. I think what's shocking is from the number of inquiries to actually approval at panel, from 153 and then only 7 that come forward. You're doing everything you possibly can, because I've been to the big lunches and various outreach where actually the foster carers are there themselves trying to promote what you can. In terms of this Foster East, I know you're saying it's given value in terms of sharing and learning, but how much has come out of that for Thurrock that, in terms of inquiries that we've been able to take forward?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying it's still very early days, so we only launched in June, and I think at the moment it's really difficult to kind of draw out if there is any added values. Our inquiries kind of remain steady, so we haven't seen an increase, particularly inquiries. We also haven't seen a decrease in inquiries. Actually, I think our current numbers were slightly up on inquiries for this same period last year. What we haven't seen yet until this week was that what comes with it, and with the funding, I suppose, from the DFE, is the kind of marketing and comms plan and the website that's meant to kind of help bolster these inquiries, and that only launched this week. So what we're hoping, I suppose, is that element of the work. I guess it's very much been about the process and getting the process set up, but then what we're hoping to see is the additional value in terms of the marketing and comms plan, the website, you know, something a lot more like a marketing website that maybe with our own Thurrock Council website isn't something that it's kind of set up to do. And that kind of branding and impact across the Eastern region so that people understand that Foster East actually is about fostering for your local council, and that actually all 11 local authorities have signed up for this, and kind of helping people to understand what that means, I suppose, in terms of actually this is still Thurrock, this is still fostering for Thurrock, but obviously we are a member of Foster East.
So, there's 49 councillors that sit here. What can we do to help and support you?
I do think, well, I think there's an element of kind of social enterprise. So not everybody's going to be able to foster. Fostering isn't something that everyone can do, but what everyone can do is kind of promote it within their networks, you know, promote it in your own channels, follow us on social media, you know, boost our presence, talk to people about it, and it's just about really understanding the need. I think, especially if there are certain kind of community groups that could help us get involved. You know, we do need more carers from ethnic minority backgrounds. And I think sometimes that's just about communicating the need. Sometimes people don't necessarily know that there is a need within their community for foster carers. They might not know that there are children in care who come from certain communities. As part of it is about kind of just awareness raising. And then I think about helping people to engage with our carers, because our carers that talk best and most passionately, I think, about what fostering is, and about what the benefits are. And I think that's kind of, it's quite a hard thing to communicate, because it's a benefit kind of in terms of what you get out of fostering, in terms of being able to actually make that impact and that difference on a child's life. And it's got to be something that's kind of a passion, and that's kind of what drives you to do it, really, I suppose, is making that difference.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. I was really pleased at the week for foster carers to meet a few foster parents, and also very surprised to hear that they often keep the children for really long periods of time. So I met one family, and the girl had been with the family for 6 years, and I think she was 12, and really a confident young lady or young person, really willing to talk to me, very polite, well-spoken, and I think, you know, obviously there must be fantastic, you know, foster carers that are looking after her, but it was really, you know, good to see, and, you know, she looked very settled and happy. So it was, you know, it was really encouraging, really, to see how, you know, how well it can work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, it's kind of things like that and dispelling those myths that I think are really important, because actually you might hear people who say, well, I'd really like to foster, but I couldn't give them up, or I couldn't say goodbye. And actually, you know, we just as much need carers who will do long-term fostering, or even provide permanence in terms of, you know, guardianship, or providing children with those permanent homes. So I think it's about being able to kind of get those messages out there, isn't it? That actually sometimes carers do have to give children back, and that can be hard when you've loved them, and you do love them. But actually we very much need carers as well who can do long-term or permanent options for children, and yeah, how rewarding that can be, like you saw. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was at the meeting myself with Councillor Vigby, and there was other councillors there as well, not many, but a few other councillors there. And it was really touching, the foster carers, and that gave us a real insight. I personally asked them to give us some raw answers, honest answers, and they was forthcoming in that. But they all seemed very, very happy with the support that Thurrock had given them. There was no negativities with the support at all. So that's really pleasing to hear. So thank you for that. Also, on about the, so I'm reading as I'm talking, the adverts that have been referred to by applicants on the same page as Councillor Watson mentioned. Facebook social media apps, it's third, 33 reports. I've only been a councillor myself for a year and a half, but I've noticed the comms team seems to have stepped up. They seem to be doing a better job, I think. So hopefully that number will go up. I just wanted to sort of say that. I don't know if you want to comment or not.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting very good support from our comms team, and we have a comms plan now that we're working to, and it very much relies on kind of analysing, where our best inquiries are coming from, and then using that insight to kind of develop it further in terms of the strategy.
That's good to hear. Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments or? Oh, sorry, Councillor Assistant.
I'm assuming you do it, but it would be interesting to see where it's obviously a small approval rate at the end, isn't it? The percentage of the initial inquiries. And I completely understand that because it's not an easy thing to do, isn't it? So, you know, there's obviously going to be lots of stages at which people might decide, no, at this moment I can't do it. But it would be interesting, I suppose, to see what advert or whatever that comes to the most successful final sort of outcome. But I mean, presume you have got those figures somewhere. But
and I think it's really difficult to bring out as well, because often when you ask people to kind of tell you what content they've seen or what's drawn them, because most people say, well, actually, we've been thinking about fostering for kind of years, 7, 8 years, trying to capture kind of what it is that they've seen that's actually kind of sparked them at that moment to decide, no, actually this is the right moment and we're going to go ahead. And I do think most often it is talking to somebody, it is meeting someone at an event, and they say, actually, you know, I have been thinking about this and I might have seen this video, but often it is that kind of one-to-one conversation and interaction that makes them go, actually, no, I can do this now, and actually maybe this is the right time to progress. And you know, often people, I think, maybe are thinking, well, maybe in a few years, or maybe when my children have left home, or maybe when I've got more time. And behavioural insights tells us that it's about what we need to do to kind of push people over the edge and go, no, actually, you can do this now. So, you know, it might be that actually we make more content of, we have kind of a growing number of carers who have their own young children, and actually showing, no, you can foster when you've got your own young family and do it alongside your family. It might be that it has to be a slightly different sort of fostering, but showing that there's lots of different options, and why, you know, now could be the right time. It's not something to kind of put off. I don't know if that answers your question.
I agree, it probably is by talking. I mean, talking to other foster carers must be hugely important, because, yeah, they would be able to ask the questions they really want to ask, wouldn't they? Yeah.
I know that they do, the recruitment team do myth busting, and they do it on Facebook, and it's, you know, can I foster? Do I have to have qualifications to foster? Do I have to be married? Do I have to have a spare room? So they do all these myth busting of things that they've asked foster carers, you know, you know, what are the reasons why you thought you might not be able to foster? So they, yeah, I mean, Liz comes to the recruitment and the retention, actually comes to the retention bit and part of the recruitment meeting. But yeah, there are a lot of passionate foster carers out there that are really concerned at the fact that we're not getting people through the door. And obviously, everyone is doing as much as they can. It, you know, it is a national issue. It's not just Thurrock. It's really sad. I don't think some people actually realise that they could do this, but it's yeah, it's how you're going to reach those people, because yeah, it's not a job. It is a vocation. It's your whole life. It takes over your whole life. I've been fostering for 18 years now, and yeah, I've got a child that's been with us for 10. I had two SGO children. That was 5 months, and they're going to be 17 in January. I had one that left and came back at 23. And they do stay part of the family, so even when they do sometimes go home. I had someone turn up 3 weeks ago who I haven't seen in 8 years, just turned up on the door. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a vocation. It isn't just a job. You've got to be passionate about it. And yeah, I've still got that passion, thank goodness. But yeah, we need more carers, because it's nicer to have in-house carers and it's more, well, it's cheaper to have in-house carers than IFA carers, and I don't think there's the control that you've got with the IFA carers. You know, we get more support as a in-house carer. So yeah, you know, I think we're all just working as hard as we can to try and get foster carers through the door. So.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's massively rewarding, isn't it? Obviously, obviously to the children, but more, well, not more so, but as much for the carers themselves. Any more questions or comments? No. Okay. Could we go to recommendations, please? 1.1, that members are cited. Oh, sorry, 1 second. The video cannot be played due to technical difficulties. So, but it's going to be shared with all members anyway. So, and I'm sure, and no threats allowed, I know, but they better share it on social media and that and get the word out. So we'll all try and do this for everyone. So yeah, so I didn't say the word threat either. Anyway, 1.1, that members are cited on the work undertaken in the foster service in respect of fostering, recruitment and retention to ensure sufficiency of care for our looked after children. Agreed? Thank you. 1.2, members to provide challenge and feedback in relation to the plan to ensure it is effective in achieving recruitment targets, retaining high quality foster carers and addressing any gaps in provision, supporting the objective of providing sufficient, stable and nurturing placements for our looked after children. Agreed? Thank you. Item 10 on the agenda, fostering statement of purpose. Can I ask Elizabeth Shields to present the report?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to go through it in great detail. So the fostering statement of purpose is a kind of statutory document that all fostering services have to have, as we are a fostering agency. It covers kind of our processes all the way through from kind of how we assess carers and what that looks like, and through to kind of how we continue to both support and kind of monitor and regulate our carers. The only kind of, one of the main differences in terms of the previous year's statement of purpose is that we have added in around the newly launched Foster Carer Association and about how co-production with the Foster Carer Association is at the heart of kind of us as a fostering service, how we kind of decide our processes, policies, and that obviously the Foster Care Association will kind of be cited on all of those and will co-produce those and give us feedback on those. So it does set out kind of the different types of fostering and what those fostering homes looks like. It sets out our kind of broader governance structures and who the leaders are within those key roles. Elise has joined as the head of service in the last year, but other than that, the kind of structure remains the same within the fostering service. It sets out how, as a service, we meet the national minimum standards, which is the legislation that governs foster carers, both in terms of the recruitment and the assessment and the ongoing monitoring. I think in the last year we've done quite a lot of work to really firm up our processes around what we do when maybe carers aren't meeting those standards, and making sure that we have really robust processes in place to address that. But yeah, that's kind of the broad headlines, really.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's all there for us to read, and hopefully we have all read it anyway. I have myself, but hopefully we've all read it. I was just going to ask one question myself. Is there an update from anything previous, or anything you've added, but you've already covered that? So thank you for that. Any questions or comments, anyone? No? Okay. We'll go straight to recommendations then, please. 1.1, that the members of the committee are informed about Thurrock's fostering statement of purpose and the local authority's statutory duties, and hold officers to account and scrutinise the work of the service. Agreed? Yeah, thank you. Item 11 on the agenda, adoption statement of purpose. Once again, can I ask Elizabeth Shields to present the report?
Yeah, thank you. So as with the fostering statement of purpose, the adoption statement of purpose is a statutory document. It sets out how we meet our role as an adoption agency. It's updated on a yearly basis. I guess one of the main differences with this year's is that because we are a member of Adopt East, across the local authorities who are members of Adopt East, we've kind of standardised our statement of purpose so that it's a kind of shared document and is consistent across Adopt East. And again, it sets out the kind of different functions that the adoption service does. So that's around kind of the recruitment and assessment of adopters. It's about the family finding, so that's how kind of you link and match children with adopters. And it's the post-order support, so that's about how we support families post-adoption. The kind of, I guess one of the differences as well is it very much brings out the modernising adoption agenda. So that's thinking about early permanence and how we recruit and promote early permanence. So that's about when children are placed with adopters who are also approved as foster carers, so that it starts as a fostering placement, but then if the placement order is made, they wouldn't have to then move to other carers. And I guess the other part of the modernising adoption agenda is about safe and meaningful contact. So thinking about wherever possible, adoption going forwards, including direct face-to-face contact. So thinking about introducing both early permanence and safe and meaningful contact right from kind of assessment and recruitment stage. So when we're going out and talking to people about adoption, they understand, what adoption is and what our plans are. In terms of the kind of overall visions and values for adoption going forwards. Again, the structure hasn't changed. It's a very stable service with a very experienced team manager who's incredibly passionate and knowledgeable about adoption. Obviously, Elise is now the head of service, which is one of the main changes, but the other kind of structures and governance stays the same. We get huge benefit from being part of Adopt East in terms of kind of both the expertise, we get a lot of training, we get support groups, but we also get obviously access to all of the adopters within Adopt East, which gives more options for our children in terms of matching and hopefully finding the right adopter for them earlier. So it's a really beneficial partnership. But yeah, I think that's the kind of broad headlines.
Thank you for that. Yeah, once again, I've read it all myself again. There's some really interesting stuff in there that I'm sure many people just didn't know. It's very worthwhile adopting. I know there's another councillor, he's not here at present, but he was adopted, I believe, him and his sister. and he said it changed his life for the better. So, yeah. Any questions or comments? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson.
Sorry, I think you need to recognise it's a good piece of work for both of them. So thanks ever so much for bringing it forward, because I didn't even know they existed before this committee. So it's I've learnt something new every day. So thanks ever so much for you, your team, and for the foster carers that do so much work in this borough.
Yeah, thank you for that, yes. I've lost track of where we are, sorry, item 11. Yeah, sorry about that. I've got loads of paper in front of me. Right, so we'll go to recommendations then. That's okay. 1.1, that the members of the committee review Thurrock's adoption statement of purpose and hold officers to account to deliver the services required as part of their statutory duties and the council's ambition for children. Agreed? Yeah, lovely, thank you. Before we go on 12, we need to extend the duration of the meeting. Sorry, I'll word this properly. We need to extend the duration of the meeting by suspending standing orders. Is that okay? We can do it for a time, so we can say 30 minutes. Is everyone agreed with that? Yeah, thank you. That's tick box exercise done. Item 12 on the agenda, Fostering and Adoption Annual Panel Report 2023-24. Can I ask Peter Turner to present the report?
Good evening, members. It's my pleasure to present the report to you this evening. Like Liz and other colleagues, I don't want to go things through line by line. I'm just mindful of the time, but some key messages, really. I mean, obviously, what the report does, it sets out the general role of the panel within the local authority. It's important to say that as a panel, we are entirely independent in terms of the recommendations we make. Obviously, we get our expenses paid, but we're not on the payroll, to put it rather bluntly. So we do have an independent mind, and I would hope that we're seen as a critical friend. I think that's perhaps the role that we would take. I think I'd also mention professional curiosity as well. I think, you know, it's sometimes, you know, looking beyond the presenting word or the presenting comment. I think we try and be as forensic as we can. I think another important message, because I think there was concern from members about, you know, you get lots of inquiries about fostering, but how many actually reach the final stage? And I think I would want to say, yes, of course, when they do come to panel, I'm quite proud of panel, really, because, yes, of course, we've got to question and challenge and check. But I would hope, and I think the statistics confirm it, that all visitors to the panel are treated with the greatest respect. We're always mindful it's a nervous time for folk, you know, seeing this sea of faces on the big screen or in a meeting. But the whole purpose, as far as we're concerned, is trying to create an enabling atmosphere so that we can bring the best out in people, but also recognise, you know, clearly there will be challenges on the road ahead. And I think you would have heard earlier that sadly there are some occasions when things don't work out. That's very much the minority of the situation. And for example, we had a situation this morning where things hadn't worked out. It wasn't a question of rubbishing the carers, it was a question of saying, look, what's gone wrong, trying to encourage reflection by both the carers and the wider department. And we've agreed an action plan, obviously that's a recommendation, but it's trying to be positive and look forward, really. Clearly for some individuals or couples, perhaps they may have made the wrong decision and you know, it hasn't worked out. But in the majority of cases, you know, where things do go wrong, we try and create a learning atmosphere where people perhaps can reflect and maybe, you know, learn from their experiences and move forward, really. I think looking at page 1 of the report, we touch on the central list. Obviously, there is a list of available panel members, and I can report some considerable success over the last year or two in increasing the diversity of the panel. If you looked at us maybe 10, 20 years ago, white, middle class, but now it's a much different picture, really. And I use the term diversity in its widest sense. You'll see, I think, later in the report, there is a summary of the panel membership, and they come from all walks of life, both young and old. And there's something very refreshing about them, really. And I think we are into succession planning. You know, I think several panel members have said recently, I've come to the end of my term. It's been a positive, natural end, if you like, and we've been able to, you know, continue to work hard to recruit new members. You'll also see, I think, the recommendation Liz mentioned about moving towards open adoption, and we're very mindful of looking at prospective carers that, in a sense, can potentially, in not all cases, but in some cases, maybe take on the anxiety of fostering with a view to adoption. That reduces the number of moves for the child. But also, more importantly, that can take a more open attitude to adoption in terms of issues of identity, you know, and perhaps willing to consider, you know, maintaining contact with birth family, whereas some years ago that door was shut firmly. So it certainly is a changing scene on that front, really. I think one of the other important messages, and just reflecting back on some of the contributions tonight, I think more work can be done by us in terms of listening to the views of the child. The last thing we want to do is stick a feedback form in front of them, you know, are you happy living with so-and-so and so-and-so? So we are looking at creative ways of trying to gain a realistic view from the child about what's like living with, you know, their adoptive or foster carers, really. And I think it's fair to say, hands up, I think there's still some more work to be done. We just need to try and find some creative ways of gathering their views and feelings without pestering them with more, you know, bureaucracy, really. Overall, I think the feedback in terms of visitors to the panel, the feedback has generally been, you know, very, very good, very, very positive. We don't often get a negative comment, but if we do, we try and learn from it, really. Perhaps disappointing feedback from professional colleagues, but to be fair, we're not mindful of the pressure on them. But again, perhaps a bit more work to see if we'd encourage them to give some greater feedback, really. I think our challenges in terms of looking forward, as I say, I think to increase the panel turnover in terms of continuing to try and recruit, you know, fresh faces to keep the panel fresh and revitalise it. I think also, you know, we certainly still want to do some work on seeing if we can, I think, work harder to listen to the voice of the child. That's really critical for us, really. And I think as a panel to keep on learning, not to get into that cosy club. You know, I think we need to, complacency is our greatest enemy, I think, really. And I think we need to keep refreshed, keep abreast of developments in both adoption and fostering, and also kinship. There's been quite a strong government focus on kinship of late. And we are seeing increasing numbers of aunts, uncles, grandparents thinking they were having a cosy retirement, but taking on, you know, grandchildren or whatever, really. And there's been some really positive examples recently of, I had a couple this morning saying they were looking forward to a nice cosy retirement by the seaside, and 4 months ago, a younger member of their wider family joined them. And for us, it's making sure that they're fully, you know, prepared and receive all the support and training. To leave you with some reassurance, I think the majority of foster and adoptive carers that come to us when we're sort of reviewing their progress, we always ask, how did you find the preparation and assessment process? Do you feel well supported? And 99% of the time they do. And I think that's an important message for you to hang on to. And I think it builds on what Liz was saying. You know, I think Thurrock is very lucky having a rich seam of foster and adoptive carers. And often we were almost, I think a couple of months ago, we were almost reduced to tears. That's us adult panel members, but I think we were really humbled by the contribution that carers had made to young children's lives, really. And I think it's when you don't get affected by things like that, that's the time to pack up. But as I say, all credit, and Wendy is a great example, of, as I say, of that rich team of carers, really. I'll leave it there. I think I've probably said enough, but open to any questions.
Thanks for that. Yeah, the report's very good again. What can I say? They've all been really good tonight. There's a couple of comments. The grandparents, it's probably made their life a lot busier, I would have thought, but much more fulfilling, the grandparents that you mentioned. Diversity of the panel, it needs to match the community. It has to in times go forward, because obviously there's more diversity out there, and only middle-aged white couples are looking to adopt or foster or care. It's not going to work. So it's really good that you're moving forward. Any comments or questions? Yeah, Councillor Watson. Councillor Assistant.
Is it standard that you review foster carers at a regular intervals? Is that a standard practice, or is it only if there's issues that are coming up?
So every foster carer, sorry, shall I answer
Yeah,
that?
no,
Is
please
that
do,
right?
yes, yes.
So every foster carer has an annual review.
Yes.
They're presented to panel, their review is presented to panel after their first year of fostering, and then every 3 years they return to fostering. But obviously if there's been a specific issue as well, then they would come back to panel. But every household has a yearly annual review that's done by an independent reviewing officer, someone who's independent of the service.
I'll just follow that up, because I think it's important if they have got issues. I mean, the temptation may be sometimes to deny those problems, but you need to have a very open atmosphere so that they feel able to come forward if they've got concerns, you know. So yeah, good if you can do that, obviously.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Peter. It's really encouraging. The one that I think is right. Let's go back. We have set a motion that's gone into policy to for uncharacteristic children, like people leaving care. And it's really encouraging to see that you have got someone on your panel that has left care and has gone through that whole process. It would also be really encouraging if that panel could also offer up some time for mentoring of the children that are here, in order that they can see what you can be accomplished and what you can do. Because a lot of children that are in care or leaving care, and the foster carers do so much, they still have a stigma that they should never ever have. And it should be embrace the fact that they've been in care and they've found some really great foster people that has looked after them, has become their mum and dad, and that they are more than just a child in care. So for that story of what I've read about social workers, she gone on to, or they have gone, sorry, it could be a man, they have gone on and they've been an author of 2 books and have been in foster care. That is something that every single child can achieve, to go to university to do this sort of thing. And I think that's really encouraging. So I would really love the panel to really think about doing a mentoring arrangement with our, you heard earlier, with our Thurrock, you know, the young voices, and with our foster carers who have children that are old enough to have that mentoring, just to give them another outlook. Would the panel be prepared to do that, please?
The particular individual that you're referring to, and I don't want to sound patronising, but she's been a breath of fresh air to the panel. I think she's all given us a good kick and said, come on, you guys, you've got to listen to what the child is saying. And so it's been really refreshing to have her on board. My understanding is that she has offered, I think, and she may have already done so, have spoken to some of the Thurrock foster carers, but I feel certain that she would be willing to make any, you know, useful contribution, really. I mean, that's certainly the spirit that she's certainly conveyed to us, really. So I'll obviously talk to Liz and colleagues to see if we can facilitate that, yeah.
Any more comments or questions? Yeah, sorry, Wendy, down the end.
No, I was just going to say, maybe she could be in touch with the Young Voices and maybe actually go to one of the Young Voices meetings. That might be a way of getting the two together. I know there's only a certain amount that go to Young Voices, but they do a newsletter, Young Voices, which goes out to all foster children. So it might be a way of connecting the two so that it gets out to not just the ones that go to Young Voices, but to all children in looked after children.
And just to kind of add on that theme, as part of Foster East, and this is one of the kind of benefits of being in a partnership with the other local authorities, is we are looking at running a young persons panel, so that young people as well, so that kind of people who are applying to foster or adopt also kind of get put through some questions from young people who understand what it actually feels like to be in foster care, and hopefully the panel could kind of help with setting that up and getting that group underway.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, thank you. I'll go to the recommendations then. That the members of the committee are invited to review and comment on Thurrock's Fostering and Adoption Panel annual performance. Agreed. Thank you. Item 13 on the agenda, work programme. Do members have anything to add to the work programme? Yeah. Councillor Watson.
Can we just add one into the January? You're going to bring back an update on the independent learning?
Yes, after January, so February onwards, ideally would be great.
On the work programme, you're at January the 21st and the 13th of March. So,
Does March feel too far away?
sorry?
I mean, I'm happy to come in March. I didn't know whether that felt too far away for you and whether you wanted, need sufficient time for it to go through governance routes. So of the two, my preference would be March, but I am minded that you will want to be appraised of progress.
Could we get an update in January, but you turn up in March? Yeah, would that be okay? Is that okay, Councillor Watson? Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Harrell, I was just going to say we can also obviously provide an update in terms of performance in January. Then that can be kind of, then you could come back in March with.
So there'll be a couple of updates. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks, Emma. Right, so that's the work programme done, we think. But before I close it, I'd just like to say this is the first time I've been the chair of any meeting. I've really enjoyed it. It's so important what we do, children's services as a whole. It's just so important. I'm really pleased that I'm chair of corporate parenting. And at the end of the day, the one thing that we've all got to remember is the child is at the centre of everything. And that is what this is all about, and everything. So supporting foster carers and everyone else but the child is at the centre. Right, thank you everyone. That concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I now declare the meeting closed at 9:28 p.m. You was, yeah.